All right, so picking up where we left off, we were looking at our vertical and horizontal compressions and stretches. And so the first one we had a stretch here. On the second one we had a compression. So the first one was a stretch vertically, and then we had a compression horizontally. So I have two more of these examples to look at. So right here now, this time we have g of x is equal to f of x. Well, you have the 1/2 first, so 1/2 times f of x. So remember, this is my original function, that's f of x right here. And f of x is the same thing as y. So we're talking about the y values. So all the y values are getting multiplied by 1/2. So technically, that's kind of what I like to write. So multiply y by 1/2, because that's kind of what we do. And so if you look back at the very first page of the notes, I kind of said basically do literally what you see on the outside of the parentheses to your y values. And anything inside the parentheses, you actually are going to do the opposite of what you would kind of think is going to take place. If you want to get a little technical, what's going on here is we actually have a vertical um, compression. Sometimes they even say that it shrinks or whatever. So a vertical compression of 1/2 right here. So if you want to get a little technical, that's really what's going on. But like I said, I kind of like to put it in very basic terms so I can come up with my new graph. And so looking here, all my y values are going to get multiplied by 1/2 at these three key points right here, right? So the first one, the y value actually is 0, so half of 0 is still 0. So I actually just stay right there. Then let's see, my next point right here, the y value was 2, but half of 2 would be a 1, so it's going to shrink down to there, or compress. And then my last point is right here. It was, the y value was -4, half of that would be -2, so that new point's going to wind up right there. And so we'll just kind of connect our dots, and there we go. And that's my new graph. And if you want to look at it algebraically, you can. I'm actually probably not going to do that on this example. Okay, so then on this next one, right here, we have g of x is equal to f of 1/2 of x. And so you would think, oh, my x values are getting multiplied by 1/2. Well, you're actually going to want to do the opposite. So you're going to multiply instead by 1/2, it's the reciprocal of that, which is 2. So technically, this is what we're going to do. We're going to multiply the x values by 2. Okay, and that will help you find your new graph. Now, if you want to get, once again, if you kind of want to use the terminology of stretching and stuff like that, we're gonna have a horizontal stretch of 2 actually. So it will be a stretch of 2. We're gonna horizontally stretch by a factor of 2. So kind of following what I have up here though in red, I'm going to multiply my x values by 2. So looking at this first point, my x value was -2. It's going to stretch to -4. Then looking at this point, my x value was a 1. We're going to stretch that to a 2 right there. And then my x value here was a 4, and that's actually going to get stretched all the way to 8 over here. And so now we'll go ahead and connect those dots, and there we go. That's it. So just to kind of quickly review, we looked at 3 different types of transformations. So the first one was shifting. So shifting vertically or horizontally. Once again, on the outside of the parentheses affects the y values of the function. Inside will affect the x values, and it's a little counterintuitive to what you might think. Then we had reflections. So if you have like a -1 basically being multiplied by the f of x right here, that's basically your y values. They're all gonna flip across the x-axis right here because the y values go from being positive to negative or vice versa, from negative up to positive. So they reflect right there. The horizontal reflection is if you have that negative with x right there. So if you have f of -x, and so you're going to reflect right here across the y-axis. Going to reflect across the y-axis. And then the one we just got done doing was the vertical and horizontal stretches and compressions. All right, so the last part we're going to look at is if we're going to do multiple transformations. And so the order in which you do the multiple transformations do matter. So right here it says a function involving more than one transformation requires a particular order that they be applied. So first, you want to complete any horizontal shifting. That's always going to go first. So any shifting from left to right needs to go first. So horizontal shifting. Next, complete any shrinking or compressions or reflections. So it doesn't really matter what order you do those in, but any of those take place in the middle. And then the last thing you want to do is any vertical shifting up and down. Sometimes it's not crucial. Like if you accidentally mix up the order, you might be okay, but there are plenty of cases where it can affect your graph. So you just want to be careful about that. So on this first one right here, we have two transformations. So this is the original f of x right here. This is f of x, and we're being asked to graph g of x. And so g of x is equal to f of x minus 3, and then we have a plus 2 on the outside. So remember, first any horizontal shifting, and so that's what we have right here with the x minus 3. So that's actually going to cause us to shift to not the left, but the right. We're going to go right 3. That x minus 3, that minus 3 actually causes us to shift to the right 3. And then the plus 2 on the outside is going to cause us to go up 2. And so we're going to take these points and move them like so. So we're going to go right 3 and then up 2. So right 1, 2, 3, up 2. So I actually land right there. That's where that first point's going to end up. Then let's see this point right here. We're going to go right 3, 1, 2, 3, and then up 2 spots. So I end up right there on the y-axis. And then my last point right here, we're going to go to the right 1, 2, 3, and then up 2 spots right here. And then I'm going to go ahead and connect those dots going from left to right. And there we go. That's going to be our g of x function. Okay. And like I said, I probably won't do this for many of these, but I'll just go ahead and show you the algebra real quick. So you can see that g of 6 should give me a 0, right? I should get 0 when x is 6 for the g function. So I'm going to go ahead and plug it into this right here. So g of 6 is equal to f of 6 take away 3 plus 2. Well, f of 6 take away 3 would simplify into f of 3, and then don't forget you do have that plus 2 right there. And then what's f of 3? Well, let's look over here. Let's see. Oh, you know what? I got that backwards. Let me fix that real quick. I'm sorry. My apologies. You're probably thinking, what the heck is he doing? That's g of 0 equals 6. Sorry about that. G of 0 equals 6. That will make a lot more sense now. Okay. Sorry about that. So g of 0, 0, so that would be a negative 3 inside there. There we go. I knew something had gone wrong. All right. So f of negative 3 right here, f of negative 3 equals positive 4. So this right here becomes 4 plus 2, which is a 6. And there we go. So sorry about the confusion there. I meant to plug in 0 and get 6, not vice versa. And so that's kind of why transformations kind of make your life easier, because instead it's going to get really messy with the algebra. So if you just kind of follow the transformations, you should be in pretty good shape. Okay, so looking at example B right here, we have negative f of negative x, and then we have this minus 3. So remember, any vertical shifting, which is always going to be if you're adding or subtracting on the end, is going to be last. So we want to take care of this negative x right here, negative 1 times x. And so the opposite of multiplying by negative 1 would be to divide by negative 1, which really essentially is going to do the same thing. And so if you want to get technical, what's going on is we have a reflection across the y-axis. Reflection across the y-axis. And so what's happening here is basically all your x values are getting divided by -1 if you want to kind of follow that rationale, which is going to basically just cause a sign change of all your x values. So we're going to have a reflection across the y-axis, and then the green part, the -3, is going to cause us to go down. We're going to shift down 3 units. So once again, we'll try to kind of color code this a little bit. Let's see, we'll start in green right here. So I have to reflect across the y-axis. So that's actually going to shoot me all the way over to here. Okay. And then I have to go down 3 spots, down 1, 2, 3. So I end up right there. That's where that point is going to end up. So I reflected across and then came down right there. Let me go ahead and erase that now. All right. And then we'll do that with the next point right here. We're going to reflect across the y-axis, so I end up right here. And then I have to go down 3 spots, down 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to end up right there. Okay. Once again, I'll kind of erase that. And then the last one, I was right here. Now this time I reflect over to this part of it right here. And then I go down 1, 2, 3 spots. So I'm going to end up right there. And let me go ahead and erase this so that now we can connect those 3 points together to make my graph. And so you want to connect them the same way they were connected over here, green, green, blue, purple. So green to blue to purple. All right, and I got a couple more of these where we got multiple transformations taking place. So right here, let's see, so any shifting left and right goes first. So we're going to do that first. And then we have that negative on the outside that's going to cause a reflection. So on the inside right there, that's going to cause us to go left 2 units. Remember, it's the opposite of what you kind of would think. Then basically you're multiplying your results by -1. That's what this is on the outside. So you're multiplying your y values by -1. So you could, if you want to, you can say, you know, multiply y by -1. But if you want to get a little bit more technical, what's going on is we have a reflection across the x-axis. All right. And so let's go ahead and do this. And so once again, I'll try to color code this a little bit. So I'm going to start right here. And so I'm going to go to the left 2, 1, 2 right here. And then I have to reflect across the x-axis right here, the x-axis. So I'm going to flip across. I'm going to end up right there. So that first point ends up right there. Then let's see, my next point, we'll take this, and I'm going to go to the left 2, 1, 2. Then I reflect across the y-axis. I'm going to end up over here. And then my last point, we're going to start right here. And I'm going to go to the left 2. And I'm actually on the line of reflection right here. And so my y value is 0. So see, even if I multiply it by -1, I'm going to stay put right there. And then now we'll go ahead and connect the dots. And we should be in good shape. All right, for our next one, let's see. So this is where the order would be very crucial. So you have to do the you have to do the -3 part last. So you want to take care of this reflection first right here with the minus. So we're going to have a reflection across the x-axis. And then we are going to go, we're going to shift down 3. And so this one's very important. If you don't do it in this order, you will not get the correct graph. Because if you go down first and then reflect, it's not the same as reflecting and then going down 3. Okay, and so the order on this does matter. So let's see, we're going to start by doing a reflection. And then, so I'm going to start right here. So I'm going to reflect across right here, across the x-axis. And then I have to go down 1, 2, 3 units. So I actually end up right 1 unit below that original point. So I reflected across, and then I went down 3 units. I actually ended up right there. Let's look at the next point. The next point was right here. We're going to reflect across down to -2. And then I have to go down 3 spots, down 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to end up right there. You can see that kind of behind the watermark. Okay, right there. And then let's see our point right here. So I'm on the line of reflection. So actually I stay put on that first transformation and then I go down 3 spots and I actually end up right there. So we'll go ahead and connect the dots like this. So that makes sense because it was a reflection and then I shifted down. So you can see this whole, the original function right here, reflected, and then drop down 3 units. And that's where we end up. And if you want to, you can play around with the algebra if you want to try plugging in, g of -3 or +3 or something like that. You'll see that you end up on this line. And now, like I said, if you would have gone down 3 and then reflected, that actually, you would have ended up way up here or something, that green point right here. So if you went down first and then reflected, you would have ended up here, which would be incorrect. And I'll just go ahead and show you the algebra real quick just so you can see that. So if I were to do, for example, g of -3, that would be equal to -f of -3 minus 3. Well, what's f of -3? Well, that would be this point right here. Oops, don't want to mess up the colors. Right here, that would be that point. And so f of -3 gives me a -1, right? The y value is what I get in return when I plug in -3. So I would have -1 minus 3. Well, -1 becomes +1 minus 3, which is a -2. So the g function, when x is -3, the y value would be -2. Bingo, that's this point right here that I have. Okay, 2 more to go, and then that's going to be it for this section. So right here, let's see. Ooh, this one's a little tricky. Okay. So we have g of x equals f of -x minus 2. So it's important that we take care of the -2 part first and then take care of this reflection piece right there. So that -2, remember, technically, it feels like I'm subtracting x by 2, but actually x is going to increase by 2 on my picture, on my graph. So I need to move to the right. I need to move to the right 2. And then the negative in front of the x, basically that's going to cause that reflection across the y-axis. Or you could basically just say divide your x values by -1, which causes your x values to, whatever they are, if they're positive, they turn negative. If they're negative, they turn positive. So I'm going to go ahead and use the technical language. So let's see, we're going to reflect. We're going to have a reflection. Let's see, across the y-axis this time. So not the x-axis, but the y-axis. All right, so taking this first point, I have to go to the right 2 and then reflect across the y-axis. Well, I'm actually on the y-axis. I'm on the line of reflection, so I'm actually going to stay right there. Then my next point right here, let's see, we're going to go to the right 2. So I end up right here, but then I have to reflect across the y-axis. So it's going to cause me to come over here. So I'm going to end up over here. Okay, go ahead and erase that line right there. And then for my last point, so we start right here. I'm going to go to the right 2. So I move over 2. I end up right here. And then I have that reflection all the way over here to -6. All the way over there to -6. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and erase that little transition I showed right there. Now we're going to connect my new dots. Once again, you want to be careful. You probably should connect them in the order that they originally were, just make sure you don't do something where you connect them wrong. So we went green, blue, purple. So green to blue to purple. And so that would be my g of x function right there. Okay, last one. Oh, we actually technically have 4 transformations going on here. Okay, so don't get too overwhelmed. Just kind of take it piece by piece. So let's see this first one right here. You got to do your horizontal shifting first. So right here, that's going to cause us to go right 1. Okay. Now our vertical shifting goes last. So I have to take care of this -2 in front right here. So this -2, technically, what it's doing is it's causing a reflection and a stretch. It's causing a reflection and a stretch. Now, what I like to do, just once again, because I'm dealing with just graphing this, what's happening to my graph, right? I'm multiplying the f function by -2, and the f, that notation there really stands for like the y values, right? So that's what I'm going to write. I'm going to say multiply y by -2. So I'm going to multiply my y values by -2. Now, technically, that's causing a reflection across the x-axis, and it's stretching the graph by a factor of 2. And I'll talk about that when we graph this in just a second. And then my last transformation is that -3, which is going to cause us to go down 3 units. Okay, we got a lot going on here, but once again, if you kind of take it piece by piece, you're going to be okay. So let's look at this first one. So I need to go to the right 1, okay? Then multiply the y value by -2. Well, currently my y value is 0 right here. So 0 times -2, nothing happens. And then I drop down 3 spots down. 1, 2, 3. So I actually end up right there. That's where I'm going to end up for that point, that first point. Okay, this next point, we're going to go to the right 1. Okay, now this is where it gets a little tricky. I'm multiplying by -2, the y value, because see that negative is going to cause a reflection, and then I also need to double it. So that what's going to happen is this is going to reflect and double. So I actually end up at -4 right here, because multiplying the y value was a 2. Now it's going to be -4, the y value for that point, the green point. And then I still have to go down 3 more spots. 1, 2, 3. So I actually end up right here. That's where I finally end up. I'm just going to put a big dot there because I kind of want to leave my breadcrumbs of how I got there. So I'm just going to kind of leave that there. But this is my point down here. And if you want to, we can go ahead and connect those first 2 points. So that's the first 2 points getting connected together. I do have one more point though. And so let's see, we'll do this one in blue. So right here, we have to start by going to the right 1. So I end up right here. Then we're going to multiply y by -2. Well, currently y is -2. So -2 times -2, that's going to flip me all the way up here to 4. My y value being 4 now. So I went to the right 1. Multiply my y value by -2 because I had a reflection and a stretch. I reflected and stretched by a factor of 2. So I end up right here. Then the last thing I have to do is drop down 3 units. 1, 2, 3. So I end up right there. And I'll put a big dot right there just so we can distinguish the process right here. And let me go ahead and connect those last 2 dots just like that. Okay. Well, so this is 2.5 transformations. The next section is actually going to be more on transformations, but we're going to deal with the 5 basic functions. And so we're going to deal with using transformations to kind of shift those around on a graph. So you're going to get some more practice at this if you're still kind of a little unsure. So like I said, the next section will be more the same. And if you have any questions along the way, just make sure you reach out so I can help you out.